Kal halayim la Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Waha, Racha, Kwadash. All praises and glory go to you, Lord. Double honors and respect go to our apostles, bishops, elders, and teachers, the men of great millstone. To you I say shalom. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there. It's your brother Amryan. Let's get into it. I did a video the other day about how many so-called Latinos, so-called Mexicans, Hispanics, were identifying as white, so-called white, okay? Which is, you're neither black nor white. That is a social construct. Color is not a race, okay? But dealing with that, I ran across this article on history.com. And the article is titled, "The U.S. deported 1 million of its own citizens to Mexico during the Great Depression." And I had never heard nothing about this, but, we know that many atrocities have happened to our people, the nation of Israel, okay? You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and North American Indians, okay? We have all been afflicted in America, Babylon the Great. But this article even further lets me know why it is an utter shame and disgrace that you so-called Latinos identify as so-called white people, okay? Let's read a little bit. It says the U.S. deported 1 million of its own citizens to Mexico during the Great Depression. Up to 1.8 million people of Mexican descent, most of them American-born, were rounded up in informal raids and deported in an effort to reserve jobs for so-called white people. Huh? And you hear this same type of rhetoric this day with the campaigns, Donald Trump campaigns. They're taking black jobs. They're, all of these things that they're going to use to round you up again in modern times. Okay. Goes on to say, in the 1930s, the Los Angeles Welfare Department decided to start deporting hospital patients of Mexican descent. One of the patients was a woman with leprosy who was driven just over the border and left in Mexicali, Mexico. Others had tuberculosis, paralysis, mental illness, or problems related to old age. But that didn't stop orderlies from carrying them out of the medical institutions and sending them out of the country. These were the repatriation drives, a series of informal raids that took place around the United States during the Great Depression. Local governments and officials deported up to 1.8 million people to Mexico. According to the research conducted by Joseph Dunn, a former California state senator, Dunn estimates around 60% of these people were actually American citizens, many of them born in the U.S. to first-generation immigrants. For these citizens, deportation wasn't repatriation, it was exile from their country, right? All right, the land that the Lord gave to the Northern Kingdom. And they started deporting, and you can believe they didn't just deport Issachar, all right, the so-called Mexicans. Anyone that resembled them, okay, probably got deported. And you have to understand, when they deported these people, exiled them, whatever money they had in the bank, whatever property that they were in hold of, all of that was snatched, okay? So once you got deported, I'm almost positive you were robbed blind after that fact. Continue reading. The logic behind these raids was that Mexican immigrants were supposedly using resources and working jobs that should go to so-called white Americans affected by the Great Depression. These deportations happened not only in the border states like California and Texas, but also in places like Michigan, Colorado, Illinois, Ohio, and New York. In 2003, a Detroit-born U.S. citizen named Jose Lopez testified before a California legislative committee about his family's 1931 deportation to Michoacan, a state in western Mexico. He goes on to say, and I quote, "I was 5 years old when we were forced to relocate." He said, I became very sick with whooping cough and suffered very much, and it was difficult to breathe. After both of his parents and one brother died in Mexico, he and his surviving siblings managed to return to the U.S. in 1945, damn near 14 years later. We were lucky to come back, he said, but there are others that were not so fortunate. Man, our people get treated like shit. And again, this is why it's so disgraceful for you so-called Latinos, so-called Hispanics, which are some of the tribes of Israel, identifying as these wicked ass devils, man, as these so-called self-proclaimed white people. Look how they have done our people, okay? They did this in slavery with the so-called Negroes, okay, which are the southern kingdoms of Israel, the tribes Benjamin, Levi, and Judah, were passed around like a deck of cards from plantation to plantation. They didn't care if you had a wife or kids. They would separate whole families, literally devastating the Israelite community, okay? And, you know, so many atrocities have been done to our people over the years. I can't figure out how you cannot see through your mind's eye that the so-called self-proclaimed white man is the goddamn devil that the Bible speaks of, okay? Raping, robbing, pillaging, devastating our community, all right? Since we were put into their hand by Yahweh, by Hashem Yahweh Shai, for our rebellion, for our disobedience, all right? Now it's time to come home. Now it's time to return out of the sleep, the slumber that you have been in, and wake up and realize who you are as a people. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and North American Indians, you are the children of the living God, the children of Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai. Goes on to say the raids tore apart families and communities, leaving lasting trauma for Mexican Americans who remained in the U.S. as well. Former California State Senator Martha Escutia has said that growing up in East Los Angeles, her immigrant grandfather never even walked to the corner grocery store without his passport for fear of being stopped and deported. Even after he became a naturalized citizen, he continued to carry it with him. I think that's the end of nope, there's more. The deportation of U.S. citizens has always been unconstitutional, yet scholars argue the way in which repatriation drives deported non-citizens was unconstitutional too. One of the issues is the repatriation took place without any legal protections in place or any kind of due process. A dean and professor of public interest law and Chicano studies at the University of California, Davis School of Law. So you could argue that all of them were unconstitutional. All of them were illegal because no modicum of process was followed. Instead, local governments and officers with little knowledge of immigrant rights simply arrested people and put them on trucks, buses, or trains bound for Mexico, regardless of whether they were documented immigrants or even native-born citizens. Deporters rounded up children and adults however they could, often raiding public places where they thought Mexican Americans hung out. In 1931, one Los Angeles raid rounded up more than 400 people. Wow, I've read enough of this, okay? You got to get it through your head, Issachar. You got to get it through your head, you Northern Kingdom Jakes, you so-called Latinos and so-called indigenous or Native Americans. You are not white. You're not a so-called white man, okay? They don't accept you as such. They despise you, Jake, and you are of the house of Israel. Therefore, you are Jacob, all right? Your nationality is Hebrew Israelite. And if you are looking to seek salvation in these latter days, you got to snap out of the white supremacy. You got to get it through your head that you're not white, nor should you want to be. I bring this up again, because again, over 58% of all Hispanics identify as so-called white people. Do you see this? And they've stolen from you, raped, robbed, and pillaged you blind. And you're still wanting to be a part of their upper ranks, their ranks. You out your ever-loving mind. Let's get a couple scriptures on it and call it a night. All right, this is Zephaniah chapter 2. And before we begin, let me just say this. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and North American Indians, you better prepare. All right, the same way that article talked about them deporting people, it didn't matter if they were citizen or not, just because they identified them as illegals, exiled them right out of the country. All right, but in these latter days, it's going to be far worse than any time before. They're not going to exile you out of the country. They're going to exile you to these FEMA camps, concentration camps. You're going to be tortured. You're going to be deemed an enemy of the state, a terrorist, okay? Because the so-called self-proclaimed white man, the devil that the Bible speaks of, is about to come down upon you having great wrath because he knows that his time is up, all right? And for those of you who identify as the so-called self-proclaimed white race, you can get the same punishment he's about to get, all right? You're going to have thermonuclear fire rain down upon your heads. You're going to take that mark, that MOT to the B, that micro C-hip that will be implanted in your hand or in your forehead, all right? You're going to submit to the devil, and you're going to receive the same punishment he's got coming. And his punishment is that he is going to be utterly destroyed. You will not have to serve out the slavery with him, but you will die of great pain on this side if you don't get your acts together, if you don't repent from breaking the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Holy Scriptures and return back onto the old paths. Seek the Lord with all your heart and all your might, all right, that you may be hid in the day of the Lord's anger. Matter of fact, Zephaniah 2:1. Gather yourselves together, gather together, O nation not desired. And what nation is this speaking of? The nation of Israel, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and North American Indians. All right. Verse 2, before the decree bring forth, before the day pass as the chaff, before the fierce anger of Yahweh come upon you, before the day of Yahweh's anger come upon you. And we're about there. We're about in the day of the Lord's judgment. Those World War III drums are beating. The MOTB, the micro C-hip, the haragma, is showing its face. And it is a chip that will be implanted in you. All right? You got the economy about to fold. All right? The markets are crashing. You got the people complaining and uprising as we speak. All the signs are pointing to America, Babylon the Great, which you trust in so much, which you love so much, about to be destroyed. All right? Verse 3, seek ye Yahweh, all ye meek of the earth, which have wrought his judgment. Seek righteousness, seek meekness. It may be ye shall be hid in the day of Yahweh's anger. Right. All right. You better put that so-called white mindset out of your head. Get rid of white supremacy, all right? You are not white, all right? A majority of you are the nation of Israel. Some of you are so-called white people, the biblical nation of Esau, Edom. And if you are, you got hell to pay. You literally are about to be destroyed and serve 1,000 years in captivity. You better pray like heck that you're not an Edomite, okay? But if you are of the nation of Israel, you're supposed to gather together. Gather together, O nation, not desired. Not desired by who? The rest of the world, these heathens, the so-called white man, all right? The Chineses, the Japaneses, the Indians, the Arabs, none of them want you. You are not desired by any of the other nations, all right? Quit trying to imitate them, emulate them. All right? Because the Lord is about to put all of them in subjection under the nation of Israel. They will be slaves. They will be in captivity under the foot of the Hebrew Israelites. Hopefully this has been edifying. Call halal la Yahweh ba Hashem Yahweh Shai for this message. Till the next time, Shalom.